everyone, and welcome to our live stream. We're delighted you're able to join us today. We are thrilled to be hosting the absolutely spectacular Michael McManus for his discussion, all talking about known hides versus blind hides. I'm sure this won't be controversial at all. So I know that we had a lot of interest about this topic. So we definitely want you guys to be participating. We're streaming this on our Facebook page as well as our YouTube channel. So if you have any questions or thoughts, always feel free to put those inside of the comments. And when you do, I'll show them up on the screen, just like this. Ooh, very exciting technology. But to try to promote you guys to be participatory, we're going to try something new. This program literally just launches today, so maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. We'll find out. But we're going to ask you all to participate in a poll. So the question is, what type of hides are you using right now when you're training? Are you using primarily known hides or blind hides? And inside the comments on Facebook or YouTube, type a 1 for known hides and type a 2 for blind hides. And then we'll see how that poll does at the maybe midway through. But as we are getting started, Mr. Michael, we have all kinds of questions for you. But the first one is, you've been involved in nose work for a hot minute. What was your approach when you thought about known hides versus blind hides when you very first started?
Absolutely. And, even though your audience is probably pretty well educated in nose work, it might be useful to do some definitions. I remember once I did a presentation for a dog club about nose work, and, an hour and a half long presentation. At the very end, someone raised their hands. When you say hide, are you talking like a cow skin? It's like, oh no, a hide is something that is hidden. So yeah, even the smallest thing might be misinterpreted.
Yes, absolutely.
So yeah, what is a known versus a blind? And in fact, I've had debates with my mentor, Dr. Roger Brantis, about this, and we don't agree on what blind hide means. So a known hide is a hide where the handler knows where the hide is. Okay. And like a lot of people say, it's always blind to the dog. In other words, the dog doesn't always know where it is, which in my classes, the dog often knows where it is because I show them where it is sometimes, depending on the drills that I'm doing. But a blind, the handler does not know where the hide is. And a double blind, which that's where I get in the debate with Roger. He says it's a double blind because it's blind for the dog and it's blind for the handler. That's what makes it double blind. I'm like, no. A double blind is blind for the handler and blind for the judge who's judging you. But so anyways, that's my working definitions right now. And probably to this, we should add double blinds because that is actually also a significant feature that you could add to training. And people are it's funny. People do all these blind hides without considering the risk. And they're terrified of double blinds. So that's interesting to me. Anyways, my approach early in my career, it's interesting. I hadn't really thought about it until right now. I didn't really spend a lot of time thinking about it. I did a lot because I trained with myself or I trained with Natalie. I did a lot of known hides. We just didn't do that many blind hides. Even in class, the classes that I took, we didn't do a lot of blind hides. We did blinds in trials and in mock trials. That's mostly where we did our blind searches. That was very fortunate for me now that I see the way a lot of people train and I see the downside of that. But my early training was mostly focused on learning how to set good hides, not learning how to run hides that I didn't know how they were set.
Okay. And then in looking at our poll, it looks like the majority of the people who are watching us right now are also doing primarily known hides. So that's a very interesting thing. Now, what I want to do is I want to ask basically a different type of question for you all. So I'm going to get this all set up and I'm going to let Michael talk about this too. When you were first starting out in nose work, so you were just talking about how you didn't really think about it. You wanted to make sure that you were setting proper hides, that everything was going really well. Did that change at all as you were getting ready to trial? Did you maybe want to say, I really need to run a couple of blind hides, maybe leading up to the trial so I actually be able to call alert confidently when I don't know where it is?
Yeah. It's such an interesting question. Like it's hard for me to rack my brain going back that far because really like my attitude towards it was I'm going to try to mess up my dog with really complicated hides. That was my goal, which meant none of the hides were blind because I was constantly trying to stump my dog. And I was really lucky. My first dog, Lumi, was just such a cooperative dog. She just like, it was never an issue for me in my mind about like being able to read her or being able to trust her. Like, yeah, we had some false alert issues later in our career, but like I always went into trials just like I like completely kind of giving myself over to her and trusting her. But yes, like, was there an increase of blind searches before trial? Yeah, there probably was earlier on in my career, but I never felt like I see a lot of my students and people at workshops that I go to. I never felt like I was like drilling blind searches a lot, which is what I see from a lot of people.
Okay. And it looks like our poll so far, people are not using more blind hides when they're prepping for trial so far.
That's
So this
good.
is very interesting. Oh, nope, we have some changes. So we'll leave that open. And guys, please make certain that you're honest. Again, this is all good. It's good information for us to get a feeling for where you guys are, because we could have some feelings, or we may notice some things in the community as instructors or just with our classes. But it's good to hear from all of you what it is that you're actually doing. Then we can talk about it. It's the whole point. So we have kind of a feeling for where you were when you started, right? What you were thinking, the kind of decisions you were making, how you were approaching it. How has that changed, if at all, and why?
Yeah, there was definitely a curve to it. And I think early on, my lack of doing blind hides is more a lack of experience. I didn't know enough to like obsess over blind hides. I just like, it was novel enough just to set hides for my dog. And like, oh, like I'll set them outside. Wow, brilliant. Like that was all new for me. On a car? Really? It was like my first NW1, I got to the start line and said, I didn't know there would be 3 cars. Like seriously, I have very little experience early on, so it was all brand new to me. Of course, after doing a few trials and especially as I moved into NW3, we started having some trouble. I think the trouble really mounted when I tried to qualify for nationals. And I've told this a little bit. This is part of the reason I'm so interested in stress and games, is because I was scoring high 90s in NW3. And then I tried to qualify for nationals and my scores just tanked, like 60s, 50s, and so on. And it made me really focus on like, why are my scores tanking? It's because of the stress. And I was thinking about that a lot. And part of that maybe too is in prepping for those trials, I probably increased the amount of blind hides I was doing. So I started doing more so that I could replicate what my dog might see in a trial, because I thought replicating it is how you get there to the result. I dug myself into some pretty deep holes that I had to learn how to dig myself out of. And I had some help from trainers who helped me, obviously. But eventually we did come out of it. And now it's like, blind searches are so uninteresting and unimportant to me at this point. Like, it's rare. It's like, obviously I do trials and those are blind. If I go to a workshop, I will do blind hides at a workshop with an instructor that I trust, and I want them to give me critical feedback as we're going. That's something that I'll do for the feedback. And then other than that, I like do 1 or 2 blind searches with a new dog I'm training just so we can develop our relationship, but it's not that important to me anymore.
Does the decision points that you have, do they change as opposed to when you're working with your personal dog, as opposed to when you're working with your clients, as far as how you're viewing blind hides?
100%. Blind hides, in my opinion, are for the handler. Like I said earlier, it's always blind for the dog. So really, from one moment to the next, it shouldn't feel different. And I hope that my dogs that I'm training now feel like there isn't that much of a difference between when it's blind and when it's non-blind, because my handling is consistent. But for my students, well, one, their handling is not consistent, not even slightly, right? And so they have to learn how to do that. And part of learning how to do that is pointing out when they're acting strangely when it's blind. And you can only do that in a blind search. Another way of saying that, or a nicer way of saying that, is too that my students need a certain number of blind hides to build their confidence. They need to feel confident in running blind searches, and it's best for them to gain that confidence in a safe environment. By safe, I mean with someone they trust, with where they can get the outcome they're looking for. What I don't mean by safe is that I'm going to be a nice person. I'm not going to be a nice person if you train with me. I'm going to try to trick you. I'm going to deceive you. I'm going to laugh at you when you fall for my trick. I'm going to do that whole thing. But we're going to make sure that the dog has a good learning experience at the end, and that you have a good learning experience, which you don't always get at a trial. Even if the CO and the judge are on your side at a trial, they can't help you. It's not a training event, so
Right.
there's no help being offered. So yeah, I need to, and if you're a student, the fewer blind searches you need to get that confidence, the better off your team will be. But everyone's different. Some people are more nervous, some people are less, and some people just need to know, like I need to know if it's blind, that's still going to happen the same way it happened when it's non-blind. And you have to give that to them, or it'll never happen.
So do you think that blind searches can sometimes be used as a crutch, that the handler is using the blind search as a way, like, now I've really got to pay attention? Whereas if they know where the hide is, they're like, I'm going to check my phone. I'm going to think about what else is going on. I'm not going to really pay attention until the dog gets closer to the hide. Is that potentially something that's going on?
There are a lot of crutches like that. So blind is one of them. Another is going off leash. I love going off leash. I hate leash handling. And I yell at my students and myself when I see them. They unclip the leash and they just sit back. Like, I don't have to do anything anymore because now my dog is off leash. So therefore they will just do everything. It's like, that's not fair. But okay, that's a digression. Yes, I hear this a lot from people, and all the time they tell me, well, I have to do it blind so that because when it's not blind, I might cue my dog. It's like, how about just not cueing your dog? So how about just don't do that? And people don't practice enough non-blind, because in non-blind situation, that's where you're gonna cue them. I love telling this story. It's super entertaining to me. I wish I had filmed this. But I had a private lesson with a student that was new to me. She trained with other people and she wanted to do a private lesson. And so it's great. They were at the NW3 elite level. And I was like, okay, I'm going to set up a blind search for you. It's going to be diagnostic. I just want to kind of see where you guys are. And so they go in, they're working. And at some point I go, by the way, there's a hide on the lamp in that corner. And like a zombie, she just turned and walked straight to the lamp, dragged her dog over there, forced the dog to alert, which is a nice working Mal, like a serious dog. He could have found that hide on his own. She dragged him over there, made him find it, and then paid him. And I was like, why did you drag your dog over there? And she was like, what do you mean? She had no idea that she had done it. You can't fix that by doing more and more blind searches. You can only fix that by stopping yourself from doing that in known searches.
Yes.
Which is one of the most important things in known searches, is recognizing what your own temptation to cue the dog into doing what you want.
So when people are training on their own and they're like, look, I don't have anyone to set a hide for me, so it's going to be known anyway. Mm-hmm. What are some of the things that they should do in evaluating maybe their videos to see what they're doing and what they have to work on for that piece that potentially, because we're all communicating to our dogs all the time. A lot of times it's ways that we didn't anticipate or we didn't even know. Yes. So what are some of the things commonly that you would want people to look at when they're reviewing their videos, when they're just looking at themselves, when they're using known hides?
Absolutely. So one of the things that I like to kind of communicate to my students is, when we're training nose work, we're trying to teach dogs certain ideas. And the ideas most people are thinking about are inaccessible, elevated, accessible hides, close hides. These are ideas. Yeah, but probably the most important idea you're trying to teach your dog is that you, the handler, don't know where the hides are. You don't know how many hides there are. You don't know anything. You know nothing. The more your dog believes that you know nothing, the less they will turn to you for help when they start to struggle. And we are giving all sorts of cues to our dogs that tell them that we know things. So I'll just give you a couple examples. We always end the search, not always, okay, we more often than not end the search when the dog has found the last hide. Dog finds the last hide and we go, wow, good dog. And we leave. And I'm sure our dogs are like, how do they know that was the last hide? That's amazing. And we don't let the dog leave if they haven't found all the hides, right? So the inverse of that, if the dog hasn't found that live hide and we're struggling, a lot of people, and I watch training, I watch practice groups, I see this, we force the dog to find the hide. And so the dog learns that, wow, we know where they are. We're going to bail them out of difficult challenges and things like that. So those are just two examples. We also can be a little greedy sometimes about pulling the dog out of unproductive areas. When we train out in public or anywhere, we're going to have to limit how far we let our dogs roam. This whole idea of like following the dog is nonsense. How far? Like 2 miles that way you're going to follow your dog? At some point, there's a limit where you're not going to follow anymore. Now, how you do that, how you choose where the boundaries are, how to apply pressure at those boundaries so that they don't hurt your dog's hunt drive is important. When you're watching yourself and filming yourself, there are 3 kind of mindsets you can have, and then of course there's overlap between the mindsets. The first mindset is the idea of working the dog, following the dog. What we'll call that in training is reciprocal handling. The dog goes here, you go there. The dog changes direction, you change direction. The dog stops, you stop. The dog goes, you go. We're basically agreeing with everything that the dog does, and we're just following the dog. That's totally good, acceptable way of handling, and that is our kind of predominant default mode of handling in our classes. The second mindset is to handle a pattern. So I'm going to go corner, 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 threshold, and obviously starting at the threshold as well. And this is also totally fair. Like, you're covering the search area evenly. You're not giving the dog clues about where the hides are because you're handling an even pattern. Okay. The third mindset, which is unfortunately too common, is handling the hides, right? Where people go from hide to hide to hide. We need to combat against that. So how do we notice when we're doing that? Notice when your body language, when your eyes and your shoulders are pointed in a different direction from the dog. Okay. I see a lot of times the dog's going this way, the handler is going this way. The dog's accelerating that way and the handler is slowing down.
Yes.
You're essentially playing the hot or colder game with the dog. You're giving them feedback that what they are doing is wrong, okay? Or what they're doing is right. Like, I don't want the dog to get any confirmation or lack of confirmation from me in a training scenario. Obviously, sometimes they need it. Like if it's a confidence issue or something like that, we can talk about the line between support and like helicopter handling where you're doing it for the dog, which like, dogs are opportunistic animals. And if you offer to them, I'll do all the work and you'll get paid, they will take that deal every single time. And so you got to be very careful because they're noticing when they can do a little less work. So yeah, notice when your body language is orienting more towards a hide or to a handler. Here's one more story, and then I'll let you kind of respond to what I'm saying. We were doing a fun class, and it's one of those classes where it was really dark and we had all the lights off and we had the handlers working with a headlamp, which made it very obvious. And so she's going on working her dog off leash with a headlamp. And I say, stop looking at the hide, look at your dog. And she said, I'm not. And the whole headlamp wiped across the room. And it was just very obvious. She didn't know that she was doing that. She didn't know until I pointed it out. And yeah, you've got to become aware. When am I accidentally cueing the dog towards a hide? When am I playing hot or colder? Probably one of the only ways to do that is to work with someone who will call you out, or film it and send it to someone who will call you out. If I can guess where the hides are without even looking at your dog, then you're doing it wrong.
Okay. Those are perfect things for people to think about. Now, some things that people may push back on are, okay, I hear what you're saying, but shouldn't I be doing those things to proof the dog off of me doing stuff?
Oh, yes, 100%, but on known hides. Yes. Actually, that might be a fourth mindset. So you got like handle the dog, handle the pattern, handle the hides. Maybe a fourth mindset is like anti-handling,
Right.
like do it wrong intentionally.
Yes.
Present the unproductive areas and omit the productive ones, rush the dog past hides, crowd them off of hides, all of that stuff. All things that need to be done on a regular basis. Absolutely.
And you're saying that those should all be done on no hides?
You can try to do them on blind hides. It doesn't work as well because you don't know when and where to release and apply pressure. I could I'm trying to imagine how I would make that work. It's better on known hides because you know what you're doing and why and where and when and all that. But if I was say crowding my dog, I would need to crowd somewhat consistently in a blind search because I don't know where the hide is. So I don't want to only crowd at certain points. My dog's going to be asking questions like, why are you crowding now versus then? And
right.
It could lead to some miscommunications.
So I think that that's a good little thread to pull upon. But before we do, I think this is very interesting as far as our little poll here, that we have 44% are using more blind hides to prep for trial and 56% are not. So guys, thank you so very much for participating in the poll. I'm sure I'll think of another one for you. But in pulling upon that and talking about what you were just touching upon, if people they're so invested in trialing, they want to make sure that they're doing well. And they are concerned that they're going to get the no. So they hear, I want to make certain that I'm not killing my dog. I want to make certain that they're not listening to me. So I want to do proofing, but I also need to do the blind hides. So I'm going to do them both. So can you pull upon that a little bit more as far as the kinds of decisions that people should be making, particularly maybe the 2 weeks leading up to a trial, what they should be doing and why, and how that's going to benefit their team the most, as opposed to how it could potentially backfire on them?
Okay, so the time frame you picked, 2 weeks before the trial, you cannot fix any problems 2 weeks before a trial.
Yes.
Okay? So problem solving is out the window. The only thing you're going to do is make your problem worse before the trial. Like my students know, 2 weeks before a trial, no blinds. You can make an argument for super known blind with help. Maybe that's okay, but again, let's do your blind searches, but earlier than that. Let's not do that. Another thing that I've started doing a lot more in my training, which everyone should be doing. In fact, this is a webinar we should put together. I've had the fortune the last 2 times I went to California working with a trainer who's given me her primary dog class as a workshop for half a day. And so I've got to work with primary dogs for half a day. Both times we did exclusively blind searches on primary. It was so fun. They got so competitive and they were calling false alerts. They were doing, it was so much fun. And there were some people who had done competition nose work with other dogs before and they'd never done blind search on primary. They all it's just as hard as it was on odor. It's just as hard, but the dog is going to win because it's primary. The dog's gonna find it. So we should be prepping for this earlier. Blind searches on primary, very low risk. Blind searches on odor, higher risk. Blind searches on odor right before a trial is the most risk. Already your nervous system's a little bit more antsy because you're approaching a trial. That's not a good, healthy environment to do more blind searches in. So we should, 2 weeks before, we should only be doing drills, but we can do those blind searches to give you confidence, but they have to be earlier than the trial.
Okay, so let's pull upon all that stuff because it's all very exciting to me. But I'm sure people are like, So for the primary piece, so you have a bunch of people who are watching right now and they are already probably competing. Their dogs are already on odor. They're happy. And they're like, well, that's nice. As a piece of advice, it doesn't apply to me at all. So let's kick this hornet's nest first. When dogs are already on odor, Mr. Michael, what is your opinion as far as them then going and hunting for primary for drills, trying to do a blind search with just primary hides?
Yeah, don't do that. Now, I have no evidence or studies to say that this is a mistake. It's a historical thing that trainers I've trained with have said, once you go on odor, you never go back to primary. Now, what that even means is not clear because my dog finds a piece of food on the ground every now and then. Was that not a primary search? Okay, the difference is I didn't put their nose work equipment on. I didn't say their search command. That's a big difference. But yeah, I wouldn't recommend going back and trying to remedially do your blind searches on primary. No, all I'm asking is that if you want to do blind searches to teach yourself how to do blind searches, do it not in proximity to a trial. In fact, if you're nervous about that, probably shouldn't be trialing. Let's get all of that squared away and trial when you're feeling more confident. That's going to be more successful for you. Now, if you're the kind of person who's okay with asking for help at a trial and you don't care, great, go for it. Or if you're the kind of person who says, I know I'm not really ready, but I'm going to go for the experience and we're going to just see where our holes are, great, no problem. I have no problem with that. And then you can do your blind searches whenever you want, but you already have the right mindset. However, if you're asking me 2 weeks before trial to do blind searches with you, what that tells me about your psychology is that you're nervous. Right. And that makes me concerned that what we're going to do is going to make you more nervous, not less nervous. Now that puts me in an awkward position as a handler. Should I set you an easy blind search that's just an ego boost? That's just going to make you feel good about yourself? Maybe that's the right answer. But then you could go into the trial a little bit too confident. That's not good either. Mm-hmm. It might not prepare you. Like maybe you need to know where you're weak. So that you know, like if I set only easy hides, then the trial is much harder. Then you failed and you go, I don't understand. We did so good in training. Well, that's my fault that I didn't let you know. I didn't match the reality to the expectation. You know, that's right. My fault as a trainer. That's a really awkward position to put a trainer into.
So if 2 weeks is too short, just trying to get people to think about this in a proper way. If you were working with someone, they were to say, okay, look, here's my calendar, Michael. Yeah. What should I be doing when? How far out would you want someone to potentially introduce blind hides, maybe for the first time, or in a way to address the issues that they may have, whether it be the handler confidence or in trying to figure out, what I'm doing with my handling and all that good jazz? What would be an ideal span of time for them to do that, to give them and their dogs enough time to get the skill sets in order to address whatever issues there may be?
Yeah. Okay. So ideal. Gold standard would be develop all your blind confidence on primary. Okay. We're not even thinking about competitions yet. We're just doing blind searches because they're fun. Most of the students they start asking questions like, oh, is this what a competition is like? They don't even know. It's not even on the radar, right? That's the gold standard. Okay. Now we're already on odor and we're thinking about ORTs. Okay. I think your last blind search being about a month before the trial is a good place, because in a month, if you do your blind search and it goes poorly, you've got time. You've actually got time to fix the problems. I think that is the key, is don't give yourself not enough time to fix any problems you discover. And so doing a blind search before you, like, let's say you're going to a trial and you do a blind search and you figure out, in 2 weeks, my dog has no idea what a vehicle is. You're not going to fix that in 2 weeks. And now you're just stressing about it. You can make a good solid dent practicing really hard, but now you've upped your practice schedule and your dog is going to be maybe more tired and demotivated because that training of like 2 weeks, have a bad search and then do a bunch of drills, that can be kind of hard on a dog. It's not the fun kind of searching that we normally do. If you've got the right attitude, it could work. But most of us, it'll feel like homework and the dog won't like that as much. So you want to give yourself at least a month, I would say. And for me, with my dogs, like the trial is the blind search that lets me know what we need to work on. And I'm okay. Like I've failed enough trials to not really worry about it that much. Like, yeah, you fail sometimes. You're going to fail a lot. That's a well-known quote that I'm sure some of you have heard, which is the difference between the master and the amateur is that the master has failed more times than the amateur has even tried. Right. And I think that's true. And I think embracing failure is healthy for everyone. In fact, if we had the right attitude towards failure, probably doing blind hides before trial wouldn't matter anymore. The problem is most of us don't have the right attitude towards failure.
Perfect. So we have some questions inside the chat. How do you help handlers deal with anxiety of handling blind? Trial nerves equals anxiety inducing. What are some of your suggestions as far as that's concerned?
It's funny you should ask. We have a whole book about this concept, our game book. So in my opinion, the best way to build stress tolerance is by playing more games, being more competitive. A lot of our games in our Nosework game book, some of them are blind, but some of them are non-blind, and they still produce a large amount of anxiety. And it is true, like you're saying, you do need to do a certain amount of blind searches to build the confidence of every individual handler. I think these blind searches should be focused on a couple things. The blind searches should be focused on challenging the handler and their thoughts. And so usually if you come to me to do a blind search, I'm going to do a blind search a level above the level you feel comfortable at. And it's the explicit goal for us to discover any holes in your handling, in your dog training, any of that. And what that does is by preempting the blind search with the expectation that you're going to fail, and that failure is good and essential for making the progress we want to make, it helps reformat how people feel about failure. The reason people feel anxiety over blind search is because they're afraid of failing. You can't fail a non-blind search. You can, but we're usually less worried about that. So if people stop being as worried about failure, and you can model for them, this is how we handle failure. We will make plans. We're excited, like so happy we discovered this hole, so we can work on it. The more you model that, the more the anxiety over failure does start to go away.
So I think this ties in nicely with this question of when you are doing blind hides, should they be paired or not paired? And pulling upon what you were just talking about of, okay, we may be setting up drills purposefully designed to elicit a failure, which is really a learning opportunity. We're gathering information.
Yeah.
But then people are like, well, the reason why it's so anxiety inducing is I'm so worried about my dog. It's been driven home. I need to support my dog. I need to end on a good note. I need to protect them, whatever the case may be. So what are some of the decisions that you're making as far as that's concerned? Are you pairing those hides? Are you not pairing those hides? Is the dog potentially going to be promoted to fail as well? If that's the case, is that the goal? All that fun stuff.
I mean, the most natural thing for me to say immediately is that I have yet to see a dog die or be hospitalized from doing a bad blind search. Okay. The risk, it's not as risky as you think. You just didn't give them a hot dog once or twice. It's not the end of the world. And if you can have that kind of attitude, then if failure can roll off of your back, it will roll off of your dog's back. Dogs don't have an intrinsic kind of idea of what it means to fail. Not something as complex as a nosework search. Maybe like when you're playing tug and I pull it out of the dog's mouth, the dog says, I lost, right? They can understand that basic concept. Or, two dogs are going for a piece of food and one dog gets it. The other dog knows, I lost. I was too slow. They do have that concept of failure, but they don't understand at the end of an NW3, if they found 12 out of 13 hides, there's no way the dog could understand they failed unless you somehow told them that they failed.
Right.
So the risk to the dog, I would say, is minimal as long as you fix your attitude. Two, about the pairing or not pairing. Huge fan of pairing. I pair almost all my hides, almost all the times, with the exception of Minnow, which we don't need to talk about why I don't pair with her. It's an experiment. That's all it is. I'm pairing blind hides, pairing non-blind hides, all of it. I love it. I love it, love it, love it. However, I don't like it when people feel like their dog needs it to be paired. That if I felt like my dog needed it to be paired, I wouldn't pair until we no longer needed pairing. And then when we don't need pairing, then I pair it. It's maybe counterintuitive, but pairing for me, all pairing does for me is make the dog a little bit less invested in trying to get treats from me and a little bit more invested in getting treats directly from the environment. Okay. And if if my dog doesn't know how to find odor unless it's paired, that's a huge problem. It's a really big problem. And that's a situation where I will not pair in that situation, unless we're talking real remedial, where we kind of like have to reintroduce odor from scratch. But even so, at that point, I'd probably stop pairing until I'm sure the dog has an association with odor, and then I would go back to pairing. And I don't know if I've lost sight of the original question, but that was my basic answer.
No, that's perfect. So basically, if you're doing a blind drill and the purpose is to really focus on the handler side of it,
Yes.
but you're trying to protect the dog as far as you want them to get the correct answer
Right.
when they find the hide, then pairing potentially is a good tool to use.
Yeah. I think honestly, time limits are a better tool to use. Okay. So when you do a blind search in training, have a cutoff where if you're unable to perform the task in a minute and a half, let's say it's an NW1 interior search, whatever, right? And I send you in, you got a minute and a half, which is not as much time as you'll get in trial, but it's too much time for training, right? Like an NW1 level hide, in my opinion, dogs should be getting that in 20 seconds ish. Okay. But we can debate about that. But if you haven't found it in a minute and a half, your time's going to end. Handler failed. Now here's the hide. Let's work the dog. Okay. So it immediately flips from blind to non-blind. You had a minute and a half to show me what you got as a handler in this blind search. You failed, but the dog's doing fine. So let's keep working the dog, right? That way we can really detach instead of like taking on all the failure. We can talk about handler fails and dog fails, and these are separate things. My dog could have a really good day and I could have a bad day. I'm sure some of us have heard that, like especially at the NW3 level where the dog passed the trial.
Yes.
Right. But the handler didn't. Well, the dog found all the hides, but I missed one,
Right.
That kind of thing.
Perfect. All right. So we got some more questions. When I have back-to-back weeks of trials and sniff-throughs, I try to do a few days of known hides between each event just to go back to having fun. Does this help doing too many blind hides?
Yeah, in fact, I just had a student who told me very proud. She's brand new to nosework, and she's had a lot of fun at her first NW1, and she did her first workshop, and she's having a lot of fun. And she's like, I'm going to make it like I'm going to search my whole area. I'm going to do a trial every month. And I was like, let's slow it down a bit. Let's not do a trial every month. Let's do every couple of months, every 3 months, maybe. That's totally fine. In the months in between, you can do workshops and things like that where you're training the dog. It's not so much blind versus non-blind. That's the issue. It's more setting the dog up for success versus testing. Doing a blind search isn't always testing the dog. That depends on the type of blind search we're doing. If you have a coach there who's coaching you through the blind search, that is setting you and your dog up for success. So that doesn't fit in the same category of a normal blind. But I think if you're going back to back weeks of trials and sniff through, that might be a little dense. Even if in between you're doing known hide searches, just the frequency of blind hides in that tight of a space can teach a lot of bad habits very quickly before you can even fix them. If you're really on it, you can counterbalance. But I like to have a little bit more space than back-to-back weeks.
Perfect. And I think that ties in nicely with this. Do you take a break from practice a certain number of days before a trial?
I recommend that to my students. I don't personally. And that's because I'm taking a break all the time because I'm just too busy to train my dogs regularly. So it's like, oh, I got a trial coming up in a month. I should probably train my dog once or twice. So yes, if you're diligent, you train 2 or 3 times a week or something like that, then you might see a huge reinvigoration of the dog by giving them a few days or a week off. A lot of people learn this the hard way. The hard way is your dog gets injured and they're on crate rest for a couple weeks or a month. And then at the end of that crate rest, they're like, oh my God, my dog is so much better than they were before. They're more excited. They're enthusiastic, everything. There are certain things that need to be maintained. They'll be sloppier, thresholds, corners, vehicle patterning, things like that need to be maintained. But the enthusiasm of the dog, sometimes that break really helps. And I think structured breaks should be a part of any competition plan. Like you should plan to take breaks at certain points.
Perfect. We have another question. What is a good guide or rule of thumb as far as setting a time to find the hides? That is, particularly if you're doing it on your own.
So if you're doing it on your own, I'm assuming that this is a non-blind scenario. And there are lots of good reasons to set time limits in non-blind searches. But I'm really curious, before I kind of go into it, why, what would your reason be for setting times in a non-blind search? If you can answer that. While I'm waiting for that answer, let me talk about a guide for setting times for blind searches. So in a blind search, how do I set the times that I set? And I have a couple different drills. In fact, why did I just teach this? I taught this because I taught a search area coverage workshop. And so the first exercise I do is learning how to measure time. And partially it depends on what your goals are. Okay. So I'll tell you two different exercises that I do. First exercise I do, I have a story that I did this in Las Vegas at a camp. And we had this little chapel out in the middle of the desert. So I let everyone look at it. Okay, look at it. Great. Okay, now tell me, how much time do you think it should take for you to cover the search area? And we had answers, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes. Different people gave different. Whatever they said is the amount of time I gave them. Okay. And one of them, who's actually someone who's trained with me a long time, so she should know better, but she said, well, 10 minutes. I don't know what you're going to set in there. 10 minutes. I said, okay, 10 minutes. You got 10 minutes. Okay. So she sends her dog to search, and the dog finds the only hide in the room in 30 seconds. Okay. In a minute, they had covered the whole room. And she said, okay, finish. No. You said 10 minutes. So keep working. I made her keep searching probably for a very excruciating 2 more minutes before I finally put her out of her misery, and taught her, like, asking for more time isn't the right thing. Like, you regretted it as soon as it got to 1 minute. You're like, why did I do this to myself? So that's one exercise. And I like doing that. It works blind and non-blind, where you give yourself a time limit, run it, and then see if your assessment of how much time it should take was accurate or not. And why wasn't it accurate? Or was it accurate? Why? Second exercise. I have a student. They're actually someone else's student, but they come to me for private lessons when I'm out in town for workshops and things like that. And she was working on, she does a lot of detective AKC type stuff. And in detective, you have a lot of time usually to find some really complicated hide problems. And she wants to be better at search area coverage because she feels like she she details areas for too long. And she doesn't cover the area, especially with NACSW. They have sometimes shorter time limits. She feels like she's running out of time. And so I said, okay. So we started simple. You got 3 hides. And it's a big area. You got 1.5 minutes. My goal in that scenario was to not give her enough time to find the hides. Okay. Why? Because I wanted to see the attitude change from her and her dog when she was put under that pressure. And the first search, she got all 3 in like a minute. Okay. So nailed it out of the park. Beautiful. And the dog, she said, was detailing. That dog moved because her attitude was different. So maybe the dog doesn't detail. Maybe it's me who's making the dog detail because I'm worried about missing a really hard hide, which is a fair thing to be worried about. In the second search, she got 2 of the 3 hides and missed one of the hides because I threw something at her she wasn't expecting, a crack hide, that she just wasn't expecting. So those are 2 examples of ways to use time limits to produce a particular response.
Perfect. We do have a follow-up for that first question. I've been giving my pup all the time they need, but should I be setting times so they and I know when it's ready to test in a trial?
I think it's valuable for a lot of reasons to set certain time limits, or at least measure the time that it's taking the dog. But with our dogs, if you give the dog all the time in the world, what you might unintentionally communicate to the dog is that it's not important for you to work with some urgency, that you can just kind of dilly-dally and go here and go there. Not every dog will do this, but a lot of them will. a lot of them will take advantage of that endless time. And one of the things I want in my dogs is a sense of urgency. I want them hunting odor like they would hunt a rabbit. And the truth about that rabbit, it's not going to sit there and wait for you. So part of the way to replicate that is by giving the dog a tight time limit that they're going to be put away on. And when the dog learns that they could be put away without finding all the hides or without finishing what they wanted to do, a lot of dogs go a little bit faster the next time, a little bit faster to try to beat the time. They do learn that. I've seen dogs that when the timer says 30 seconds, that the dog on their own just starts going faster because they learn that 30 seconds means I'm going to be put away and I want another cookie. So I better find something. So yes, I would recommend being careful. Like giving the dog all the time they need is good most of the time, but some of the time you might accidentally be reinforcing a different attitude that you didn't want.
So just real quick on that, for those kind of situations, so let's say that you set a time limit because you think that you have inadvertently built this, where the dog is like, I could be out here all day.
Yeah.
So you set the time limit. The dog doesn't meet the time limit. They don't find the hides within that time limit. Do you also use jealousy at all in that case, where you put the dog up, you put them inside a crate where they can watch another dog, then run and get the hides?
I love that. And then I said that to someone to like, or to a group, like grab the other dog and run the other dog and let them watch and make sure, that you're giving a party on the hide, like really make them jealous. And then someone was like, I don't have another dog. It's like, well, then work a fake dog. Go out there with a fake dog and have a party and let your dog feel jealous about you with this imaginary dog you're running. Like seriously, even that will have the same effect because the dog's like, why are you having so much fun out there without me? That's not fair.
And would that same approach also work if the dog were to have made a decision that you were less than thrilled with? They pottied in the search area, they went for a distractor, whatever the case may be. Could you potentially use that as well, or is now that getting kind of mushy?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so when we're talking about putting the dog away for working too slowly, for pottying, for crittering, whatever it may be, we're talking about punishment. Okay, we're talking about something that reduces a behavior. And in my opinion, punishments and corrections really only work well. Maybe that's too extreme of a statement, but I'll say it anyways. Only work well when the dog really wants what they're missing out on. So it's like if I throw a toy and I recall the dog and then and then I correct the dog for not recalling to me. If they don't want the toy, that whole drill didn't make sense to the dog. The dog doesn't understand. I just got a correction for no reason. But if the dog understands, I really want that toy, and if I come back, I will be released to go get that toy, you can get faster and faster recalls because the dog learns, I obey, and then I get what I want. And when you go out there and play with another dog in the area that the dog could have had treats in, that makes the dog realize what they were missing. Especially since our dogs, like our sport dogs, we do a lot of work to make them enjoy their crate. So just putting in their crate may be a reward to some dogs. And I need some way to differentiate. I'm putting you in your crate because you did something wrong versus I'm putting your crate because I always put you in your crate after every search. And we don't want every time I put my dog in a crate to be a punishment, right?
Right.
Even though it is scientifically on a certain level. But this is a great way to differentiate, see what you're missing versus a normal being put in the crate.
And just as an important caveat, if you had a reactive dog who saw the dogs and lost their mind, would this still be a good idea to do?
Yeah, probably not. If you have a reactive dog who is fine with your dog in your household and you want to do it that way, that might work. I would still, depending on your issues, be concerned with creating inter-household jealousy that could be problematic for you, which, to be fair, that could even happen with totally stable dogs. If you make them too jealous of some other dog, this other dog keeps getting my treats and now we're at home and I'm going to take him out and, okay, that could even happen. So you want to be careful doing too much of the jealousy thing, but I do it with my dogs and my students' dogs successfully. And we just know how to make sure we're not going overboard where we're for every little thing, we're switching out for another dog. Because not only could you create that jealousy, you could also shut the dog down where it's like, everything I do is wrong. And everything I do, you pull out the other dog. And that could also just like demotivate a dog. The goal is to motivate the dog. So if it's demotivating the dog, stop and reevaluate.
Yes. So I think this is a good thing to pull upon is that you're giving lots of really good tidbits, exercises, drills, ideas. I don't want anyone to latch onto any singular thing
Yeah.
and then just do it to death without thinking about it.
Yeah.
Instead, it's more so there are these plethora of options out there of things potentially that you could do. And you want to think about what's the purpose behind this? When would I use it? Maybe I only ever use it once and it did what I wanted it to do. And
Yeah.
I don't need to use it again. So I think that's really important. That's what really was the thought process behind this whole live stream is the whole idea of known and blind hides. They are tools, and we should
They
be
are.
thinking about the kinds of tools that we're using inside of our searches. So we have a whole bunch of questions. When I am setting known hides, do my dogs just follow my scent? I wonder as they have become better at searching for odor, are they just following my odor, and how to make sure that they are really finding the hides that I have set?
Yeah. Okay. So good question. And yes, they probably are. Um, Especially you said my dogs. So you're running multiple dogs, which not only your dogs might be tracking you, but they might be tracking each other. Um, so a couple thoughts about that. One, I think all highly competitive dogs are very aware of tracks. Why wouldn't they be? If this is the fastest way to a hide, guess what? I also want my dog to have the fastest way to the hide, which might mean tracking other dogs because I want that ribbon. Okay. What I don't want is a dog who is reliant on tracks, who can't find it without the track. And so then when you happen to be dog one on the running order and there's barely any tracks in the search area, the dog is lost. That's not what I want. I just want a dog who could use a track if it was available to them. Let's try it, see if it works. If it doesn't work. That's great. So what are some things we can do to change that? One is laying down tracks before and after you set your hides. So lay tracks going random directions, set your hides, lay some more tracks going random directions. So now there's just too much information for the dog to latch onto. And setting different hides for each dog that you own. And it's so easy to set out 3 hides and run all your dogs on the hides, but it's better to set out 1 hide. This goes back to the multiple versus single hides. 1 hide, run a dog on it, move it to a new spot, run another dog on it, move it to a new spot, run another dog on it. And so they're all getting their own unique hides. And what you'll see if you haven't done this before is that dog 3 might false alert on the first 2 spots where you set hides, not because of the residual, but because that's where the other dogs put their noses. Why do I say not the residual? Because I'll bet you could do that hide for your first dog and then move it for the same dog, and they don't go and false on the residual spot because they already found the hide there. They know that. They're only going there because the other dog scent led them there. The second thing I would add to that about tracking is if you've never done this before, walk around the perimeter of the search area and throw the hides in. Don't walk in there. Just throw them in. Let them land wherever they land. And that's a good way to test occasionally if your dog is relying on your tracks. There are no tracks in there now. It's just odor has been lobbed in there somehow. Okay. So try that. See if what that does for your dog.
Perfect. And then when they are actually trying to purposefully set distractor tracks for all intents and purposes before and after the searches, is there anything that they should be doing? Should they be touching things? Should be standing in a certain spot for a certain period of time? Are there certain things that they should be thinking about as a handler? So it's not just simply, okay, I put the hide on the chair, or I'm planning on putting the hide in the chair. I walk to this corner, I come back, I put the hide in the chair, I walk to the other corner, I grab my dog.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. I used to, when I first started training, I used to do this religiously at every search, and I don't do it as much anymore. And I think it was probably a good idea and I should still do it. But I used to rub my hands on multiple surfaces in the search environment just to make sure my dogs weren't tracking my hands in. And I do this 5 or 6 spots in every search area every time I did a search. And I don't do that as much as I used to, and I should. Laying the distraction tracks, you can take some cues from tracking people. Laying scuffed tracks or puppy tracks where you really pound it in. Dogs notice that kind of stuff. I know because now I'm doing tracking. Man, they know the difference when you walk differently. Makes a huge difference. I just got reamed by my tracking instructor. Just like, you're setting crappy tracks. I can't believe your dog could even follow your track. And I was like, okay, I got to do better. So yeah, you can set tracks in different ways. You can jump up and down. You could sit down on the ground, roll around. That'll change. Your dog will notice that if you do things like that. It's really cool to watch, actually. It can be really fun to read them seeing how they handle your different tracks.
Perfect. And then how often do you recommend working blanks if they are known?
Mm. Well, known and unknown. I think people should be doing more blanks than they normally are. Um, I talk a little bit about odor obedience and how there's multiple factors to odor obedience. One of those is desirability, which is what most people think about, like higher value treats, pay them better, more praise. That's important, but you'll hit a wall if you only focus on desirability. The other two are urgency, which we talked about before, and the other is scarcity. So this is why someone else's treats are always more interesting than your treats, even if they're a crappy treat. But like, they're not that good, but it's new. It's something the dog hasn't seen before. Another example of this is, we used to have sheep on our property, and dogs who would visit would just shovel mouthfuls of sheep poop into their mouth, right? And our dogs, we could let them off leash, and they weren't that interested in sheep poop. And people were like, why don't your dogs eat the sheep poop? Well, they did the first like 3 days, and then they got over it. They just got over it. It's not that fun after 3 days. It's only fun the first day. Okay. So if you're throwing at your dog tons of hides all the time, the hide becomes a little bit inflated in its value. It's not that exciting because it's everywhere. And if you start doing a slightly higher proportion of blank search areas, which blank searches, I'd rather we talk about unproductive, because every trial level, when we talk about blanks, we think, oh, well, that's not until NW3. But if we think about unproductive, well, unproductive is at every level. Every level has unproductive areas in the search area, and those are blank, and the dog has to learn how to move through them. So the more we emphasize, not just I'm going to place hides here, but these are going to be designated unproductive areas that we will work, right? The more you do that, the more odor becomes a exciting, novel phenomena when it happens, and that will improve your odor obedience.
Would you want people to do more blanks to start off with that are known, blind, or does it matter?
It's a good question. I don't think it matters. At the last primary class that I did, where it was all blind searches, I threw them into a blank search, blind. They didn't even know that it was a possibility. And I just said, okay, go find your hide. And they went out there, and I bullied them. Where have you checked? Where haven't you checked? Where haven't you checked? Why isn't your dog finding anything? I bullied them until I said, I don't know why my dog's finding it. Is there nothing here? They would say that. And I thought that was a fantastic exposure to your first blank search. One dog worked 4 minutes in a tiny little thing. 4 minutes. That dog was like, I give up. And the coolest part about it, there was almost like, if you put it on a graph, the dogs who had to search that blank area longest, when we went to the next area that had a hide, had the fastest times. It was almost like the more we frustrated them in the blank search, the more they took that frustration and channeled it into drive in the next search. Does that always happen? No, you could shut a dog down. They could be like, I'm done. That can happen. But more often than not, just tuning up the number of blank searches you do. Again, unproductive searches, like making sure not to direct the dog out of an unproductive area, allow them to explore it, or even sometimes directing them into unproductive areas, especially since we are going to be tempted to direct your dogs towards hides. Well, at least balance that off and direct them towards unproductive areas occasionally. Okay? That's a better way to teach the dog about direction. Usually it's wrong.
So, would a potential way of working this or introducing this concept to have maybe 2 rooms or 2 areas, you have to finish one area before you can go to the next and have that be blind?
You can. Yeah, we did that recently. I do that a lot in classes. We do lots of segmented searches. The only difficulty there is that the dog might catch the hide in the other room or the other space, depending on how solid the barrier is. And now you're having to coach the handler how to interfere with the dog so that they can't go there, which is fine. That they need to learn how to accept human handling at some point. Probably my preferred way of doing it, though, is to send the dog into a blank area and to have someone else there with a hide that, as the dog is working, will plant into the area while they're working. The thing I love about that is you can have a dog, especially if they have some threshold training. So a dog checks the threshold, leaves, plant a hide at the threshold. And when the dog comes back for their second pass, which a lot of dogs on their second pass are a lot less motivated, well, now there's a hide there. And the dog goes, what the hell? How is that possible? I already checked this spot. And now we've got a dog who's a little bit neurotic about double, triple, quadruple checking their thresholds. They don't want to be fooled. And we can do that and create intense amounts of drive in blank searches because they think that a hide could just appear somewhere they've already checked.
Perfect. We have a couple more questions for you. The first is, how early in training should you start working on blanks?
Yeah, I mean, so like conceptually, how early are we talking? Like theoretically, at puppies' first search, they come out of the womb, they use their nose to find the mother's nipple. Okay. But your dog has been doing blank searches since it was born. It's been looking for things and not finding things sometimes. So your dog, like people act like blank search is a concept you have to teach a dog. No, your dog already knows this. Your dog already knows this. We have to teach handlers how to handle blank searches. Let me take the blank search that I did with all those primary dogs. Every dog did it just fine. No dog was confused about this. Okay. Every handler was confused about it.
Yes.
Because they had expectations. So how early should you start introducing that to human handlers? That depends on you as an instructor about the density of your program. Like, you're teaching a lot of concepts to people. Is that the most important concept to introduce to people in the first couple of weeks of training? Probably not. With my dogs, my personal dogs, which you can follow because I document my training of my dogs. You can follow. I introduce the concept of a blank or unproductive area very early. Like within the first 5 to 10 sessions, they have had a blank search at least once.
Perfect. As we're just starting to wrap up, a final question that I had for you was not this one, this one. What are some of the pros and cons of known and blind hides that people should keep in mind when they're doing their training?
Okay. So pros and cons of known. Let's start with known. So the pros of known is that we can properly support the dog when they need help in skill building, that we can have objectives like training objectives that we want to accomplish that are a little easier in known searches. We can focus on your handling about not cueing the dog a little bit easier when it's known because I can see when you're doing that more. Cons of known hides is that most people need, this is going to be a pro of blind hides, need that confidence boost of feeling like they can do it. And so the con of a known hide is that most people don't get the same confidence. I do, because I've done enough blind searches that it's not a big deal. So now if I can see that my dog does hide well in a known search, well, guess what? They're probably going to do that well when it's blind, as long as I don't do something stupid. Okay. Right. Another con of known searches is that you're going to be tempted to cue and help and signal. That's a problem. And it's funny because the pro is the con. The pro that you get to work on it. The con is that you have to work on it because you're going to do it wrong. So that's typically the case. For blind hides, I don't know if I missed anything, but for blind hides, the pros are that you can build some confidence potentially. And the inverse con is you can destroy your confidence very quickly in blind searches. If you're nervous and you don't know what's happening, and maybe your blind hide setter either sets bad hides or coaches you poorly, that I'm putting a little too much responsibility on the hide setter, because really it's your psychological state that makes it a valuable experience or not. I can set the worst hide in the world, and if you have the right attitude, you go, wow, that was really hard, and you just leave. It's not a big deal. Nobody gets offended. But if you're upset, then it's going to go poorly. A pro is that you're less likely to try to guide your dog to a hide, and if you do, you're probably going to guide them wrong. So that's an advantage, is that your cueing is going to be less useful. I don't know if I'm missing anything, but those are the ones that come to mind.
Perfect. Well, this was amazing. As always, you offered so much information, sir. Thank you so very much. But as we're starting to wrap up, I wanted to give you a moment to talk about all of the things, all the things that you do. So you offer a fantastic membership through your business, Ready, Sit, Go Dog Training. Can you talk a little bit about that, please?
Yeah. So our premium membership is primarily so that people can get early access to our classes. They also get discounts for all of our courses and classes. We also have a backlog of all of our live stream episodes there. I'm behind in uploading to it, but it's got a lot of episodes, more than you can listen to for a while. And then we've got some interviews and other things. So we've got, I'm really proud of what we have there. And like I said, it gives you early access to our classes and they fill quickly. So it is nice to have that.
Perfect. Yes, you guys definitely want to make certain that you check it out. And I can attest, I am a member and I have barely scratched the surface on the backlog of stuff. So you definitely want to make certain that you guys check that out. And you also want to do that because Michael is offering an Intro to Canine Nosework class that's virtual, be done via Zoom. So can you just talk a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, and one of these days I should come up with a different name for it, but Intro to Nosework communicates the idea pretty well, so I leave it. But the problem of it is that people think it's for beginners. When I have a lot of teams come through that are coming through with elite dogs or dogs at the higher levels who just want to relayer their foundation. Every exercise in that course, it's not a progressive course where week 2 builds on week 1 and week 3 builds on week 2. It's a toolkit class. So I give you a different tool each week that you then have to go and apply to your dog in different ways, which means each exercise is modifiable and scalable to any level. So just to give you an example, like in week 2, we do a simple independence exercise. Plenty of you guys have done it. You sit in a chair and there you have boxes around you and the hide's out there in the box and you have to stay in the chair until the dog finds it. Basic independence exercise. Well, for beginner dogs who've never seen this before, it would be just like that. But for elite dogs, maybe it's 30 feet that way and elevated up a tree, and you still have to sit on this chair. So you just scale that to whatever level the dog is. So it's for any dog, and it's going to cover what we consider the foundational skills of nosework. So there are 4 foundational skills for the dog: hunt, drive, independence, problem solving, and confidence. Those are the first 4 weeks. The second 2 weeks are the foundational skills for the handler, which are patterns and handling. So for patterning, we talk about thresholds usually. And for handling, we talk about blind searches, reading the dog. It's a fun course. I like teaching it. And it's different every single time.
Perfect. So yes, please come join because I'm auditing this one because it's just so good and we can always grow and continue to learn. So make certain that you come on and join in on the fun. And one final thing, we are very, very fortunate. Again, Michael just shares so much of his knowledge with us. We're very appreciative. He is coming back to offer a live webinar for us. And in this live webinar, he's going to be talking about payment, as in payment for the dogs. So what the
paying me more money.
Yes, exactly. Making sure that this man is compensated. So can you talk a little bit about what you're going to be covering inside that webinar, please?
Yeah. So like I told you, and it's kind of funny to me. So I was talking to someone in a private lesson about how I like throwing treats for my dogs. I throw treats all the time, and I think it's really fun for them, and it builds great intensity, enthusiasm, stickiness to odor, all sorts of things. And she was like, "Ugh, I'm not doing that for my dog." And that made me go, I should do a whole webinar on this topic. So that's where this webinar comes from. And I want the nosework world to be less tribal, to be less, I pay this way, you pay this way. And that's an identifier of what ideology you hold. I'd rather see payment of reinforcement strategies as a toolkit, that there are different ways to pay dogs for different reasons. There are pros and cons. Remote reward isn't evil. Paying at source isn't evil either. They're both great. Pairing, I can't believe how many people think that's the worst thing in the world. It's like, look at the Nationals. So many dogs trained with pairing. So many dogs trained with absolutely no pairing. Indication response from the beginning. So many dogs from the shelter. So many to purebred dogs. Like, you can't in nosework say that any one method is wrong or right. Dogs succeed with every method you can imagine. So what's better to look at is, what are the pros and cons of these tools, and how can I use them to have a better response for my dog? That's my way of looking at it.
See, and that's because you're brilliant. And that's exactly what we're trying to promote, is for people to develop as many tools as possible so they have nice overflowing toolboxes. And maybe you don't ever have to use some of those tools, but you have them, you know what the purpose is, you know what the thought process is behind it. And if you do get a different dog or a different situation, you're like, oh, I really wish I had that tool. Well, now you will.
Yep.
to be able to use it then. But sir, I want to thank you so very much for everything that you offer through everything that you do with your business, all the knowledge that you share with Network University. Again, we are very, very fortunate for everything that you give to us, particularly all the games. You are awesome. You guys were amazing inside of the comments today. Oh my God, gold stars for all of you. We're going to give you all, come on, little thing, you can do it. You can do it.
I feel really good when we have audience interaction. So you guys have really made my day.
Yes, no, absolutely. Poor Michael, for some of the things that you've done, like our live virtual events, where sometimes people are just very quiet.
Crickets.
Can't they just say something? Can't they do more? Make him so sad. So make certain that you guys don't do that. Participate.
I cry and I cry myself to sleep. It's awful.
He gets out his little binky, he goes, oh. All right, guys, thank you so very much. We really do enjoy the fact that you joined us for this live stream today. But as you can hear, Tiny Terrier is saying this is done. So please make certain that you give a cookie to your puppies for us. Happy training. We look forward to seeing you all soon.